CTG specialist, our upcoming presenter manages Linode Cloud at Akamai Technologies. Prior to joining Akamai, he was a software engineer at Samsung based in Korea, a program manager at Microsoft, and a service platform expert at Vingroup in Vietnam. He's the author of 12 IT books on software engineering, web performance, DevOps, and cloud. That's Brandon Kang for you. Along with him, we have with us Mr. Navaneeth Parthasarathy, who is a senior solutions architect at Akamai. He has been in the cloud and edge computing space for over 11 years and has authored the CTN chapter of Web Almanac 2021 and has also been a reviewer for the media chapter in Web Almanac 2020. Their talk today has a deep focus on the challenges faced by companies when adopting a multi cloud strategy. Taking charge of his screens, please help me welcome Mr. Brandon Kang and Mr. Navaneeth Parthasarathy. Over to you both.
Hello, everyone. This is Brandon from Akamai Technologies. I'm a senior solutions technical architect from Akamai. And this time I will talk about unlocking the potential of multi-cloud.
This is Navneet here from Akamai Technologies as well. And I'm also a senior technical solutions architect. And with Brandon, I will be walking you through the potentials of multi-cloud architecture and how one can go about exploring those options. With that introduction, in mind, let me start off with why this entire multi-cloud as a strategy is kind of taking shape. And this has to go with a shift in the way the applications are being developed and delivered over the internet in the last, I would say, decade or so. Back in the days, it used to be a monolith architecture where the application would be deployed on a data center and you would have your end users connected over internet directly accessing those ones. But with the move to cloud hosting and also with the different challenges of the internet coming into the picture, you have multiple layers between your application stack and the final end user who consume it. They will be your cloud hosting providers. They can be the CDNs, which operate at the edge network. And also nowadays, CDNs are offering edge compute technologies as well. So you have the ability to deploy microservices or serverless functions at the edge and kind of have a very distributed application architecture ranging from the cloud all the way till the edge before it ultimately gets delivered to the end user. With this architecture comes a couple of challenges. One is that not all cloud vendors specialize in all the different technologies in an application stack. Few cloud vendors are pretty good in few components of your application stack, whereas few others are expertise in their own set of stacks. So thus what happens is when developing an application, depending on which are the strengths and weaknesses of those particular cloud service provider, you tend to kind of have to figure out certain workarounds where it may not be the most ideal option. Which is where we have seen that a lot of organizations have already taken that step towards having a multi-cloud strategy in mind. Over 92% of the organization already have multi-cloud as part of their strategy, maybe as of today, or maybe as part of their future planning as well. And about 81% of the companies, they already use or work with two or more cloud vendors. So the concept of multi-cloud is not as new as what most of us think, and it's at a fairly mature stage with a lot of these statistics giving a lot of foundation to those numbers. But multi-cloud, over and above the technology competence that each cloud vendor provides, also has its other set of reasons why somebody would want to go with the multi-cloud stuff. And the first and most important reason comes with the business continuity or the business risk associated with locking in with a single cloud vendor. So as the saying goes, you don't put all eggs in a single basket because it's not the best thing for you. And the same applies for the business who kind of tend to lock themselves into a single cloud service provider. And that kind of came a lot to the fore during the pandemic, when there were a couple of outages across different major cloud service providers, and businesses who were highly dependent on a single vendor face the consequences of it. And beyond a certain point, the while the ease of use and the go-to-market strategy comes into picture, you do tend to see that business continuity and business risk takes a lot more precedence over the technicalities of a particular cloud vendor. So that's one key reason why any organization would probably want to diversify their applications across different cloud vendors. The second is more on the skill set availability, especially on the cloud computing side. In India, we tend to see a lot of folks with good, experience with in managing cloud service providers technologies. However, that is not the case when you actually look at the global picture. There is still a lack of talent when it comes to the cloud service provider, competence. So, which is where organizations tend to have challenges when they plan move their workloads to the cloud. So that also acts as one of the reasons or a deterrence in moving workloads to the cloud. And in the process, they tend to have more of I would say, like a multi-cloud architecture, where part of it can be there on their own on-premise data center, whereas part of them will be on a particular cloud vendor. And the last one is about the overlap in the end product or the solutions that a particular organization offers, which tends to overlap with few of the solutions which cloud service providers are offering now. So back in the days when the entire cloud hosting started, they were more of infrastructure as a service. But over time, they have added more capabilities and a lot more proprietary technologies, which tend to overlap with products that a particular organization specialized in. A classic example is in the media or the OTT space. Back in the days, we used to have a lot of these encoding and transcoding specialized organizations, and they were one of the early adopters of the cloud technology, primarily because of the scale that the clouds would provide and also the multiple points of presence. So thus they started, they became very heavy users of the cloud service provider. But over time, as these cloud vendors added more products to their portfolio, they started introducing encoding and transcoding solutions of their own. So which basically competed with these encoding solutions who were using the same cloud vendors for their hosting as well. So this tends to raise a question whether the cloud service provider will have the best interest of those particular vendors in mind, or will they be focusing more on their own product stack when it comes to the future development. So that is where, again, from a business risk and a continuity standpoint, it becomes a little bit uneasy for the CX folks. And in the process, the trust that you have with the particular vendor kind of diminishes. So that is where you tend to look at diversifying into a multi-cloud strategy. While all of these sound very, good in theory, the practical aspects of implementing them is far from rosy. And the first and foremost thing is about figuring out who will be those set of cloud vendors that you would tend to work with. Like I just said in few slides back, uh, each cloud vendor has their own set of competence. But when you start looking into the nitty-gritties of it, while a bunch of technologies or the technicalities would meet your requirement, a bunch of them may not meet your requirement. The second part is, do these particular vendors have those services available in the particular locations that you are looking at? Because depending on the services you are looking at, few locations that for the particular cloud vendor may offer it, but in few locations where you actually need it, they may not be even available. And then the other part is obviously on the cost, like at what cost these particular service provider are coming at, and trying to figure out the right balance between between your specific technical requirements and the business of operating on that particular cloud vendor. It's always a very difficult requirement to address. This kind of goes into the second point, which is about fitting all the different pieces together. So like I said, monolith architecture is no more the trend, and today we are into the containerized and the microservices architecture. So each application may be working on different application stacks depending on the modules that the developers develop. And few modules may make sense with a particular solution in mind, and few modules would require a different set of solutions in mind. And depending on how it is architected, few of them might be using proprietary solutions from a particular cloud vendor, and whereas the few other modules might be using a bunch of open source technology. So that is where when you try to move an entire application to a different cloud service provider, it's easier to see that part of the application works well, but the other part will have to be completely re-architected or redeveloped altogether. So which is where you have to figure out whether all the pieces kind of fit together when you try to look at this multi-cloud strategy, or how are you going to address it. The third point, just touched upon a little bit earlier, cost is again a very big factor, because while you can have all the technical requirements addressed, it all comes at a cost. And whenever any business looks at it, they can have investments of particular cost for a particular result. So just because a particular cloud vendor is great in what they do, and it kind of goes with your multi-cloud strategy in mind, it doesn't necessarily mean it's the most cost optimal solution at the same time. So you have the complexity of taking the cost into the equation while you figure out these things. And while you do all these different stuff of figuring out the right requirements and the cost, all of them today come with a security angle that cannot be ignored. Security in the current day and age is definitely one of the top priorities that any organization tend to look at. You can have a fantastic application which does all your functionalities and performance KPIs, but if it is not meeting the required security levels in terms of keeping the user's data safe, ensuring that the applications have the right access permissions, they have the right firewall policies, the right IAM privileges, depending on which services talk to which other service. You need to ensure that in a multi-cloud across different vendors, you tend to maintain a very consistent security posture. So doesn't make life easy when you bring this security into the picture along with all the other stuff. And the last part is about the key base of development. While when if considering that, say you figured out all the different pieces, the cost, the security, the technologies, and everything, the cloud vendors are not sitting still. They keep coming up with new offerings. They keep evolving their platform. And then you will have to go through the entire loop of re-evaluating whether your applications are still making sense with the newer versions of whatever the services that comes with it, and again re-evaluate the entire thing just to ensure that there is no gap in the application's performance, KPIs, security, as well as your ease of managing those things. Now, how do we kind of overcome these challenges, and how do we kind of make life easier in a multi-cloud environment? And that is where, when we look at the hyperscalers, since each of them are very focused on their set of technologies, it kind of gave birth to a different set of cloud service provider who wanted to kind of help developers or the organization in this space. And those set of companies or the cloud service providers, we tend to call them as the alternate cloud. So to talk more about alternate clouds and how an alternate cloud can help you do this migration to the multi-cloud architecture, I will hand it over to my colleague Brandon, who will take it over from there. So Brandon, over to you.
Thank you, Navaneeth. The cloud infrastructure market is dominated in terms of revenue by a few very large vendors. These vendors called hyperscalers, they dominate the conversation around the cloud, and they define the expectations for the market with their approach to services and technology. While the largest cloud providers are set apart by fast-growing portfolios of advanced services, alternative cloud providers offer the core cloud experience with a focus on simplicity, ease of use, and attractive cost. You can see four pillars here. First of all, interoperability. It means ability to move workload to another environment easily. Policies or preference keep many people with a single cloud. if they do need to move workload around, alternative cloud is a fit. Offerings the developers that look for pre-built components from their cloud provider aren't likely to want to build something from scratch. Those are already using open source tools have a far easier time incorporating alternative cloud into their infrastructure. Alternative cloud provide you very common open source tools and automatic tools to boost your development time and easier maintenance. And DevOps requires a number of automation systems, and they should be integrated with each cloud provider in order to work. Alternative cloud offers a fit for DevOps developers using open tools and cloud agnostic tools and automatic process. Catalog, why the hyperscalers have the complexity in measuring the budget or cost issues with their complex product. Alternative cloud has a very simple and easy to understand the pricing table. And we have the simple and transparent price structure. So it's a good fit for IT managers who want to better manage their budget. From the IDC's research of Akamai Computer Vision report, about 50% of DevOps professionals choose alternative cloud providers when going multi-cloud. There can be a number of reasons for this, but most DevOps teams are good at developing applications using open source tools and components instead of the popular managed and commercial services. Alternative cloud platforms are now playing a more significant role as a complementary choices within a broader multi-cloud ecosystem. While alternative cloud providers have been more popular among startups, SMBs, and independent developers, thanks to their affordability, there's also a growing number of large enterprises pairing alternative cloud services alongside other public cloud to find significant benefit from the alternative cloud providers. The alternative cloud is more useful when they are used for small functions rather than is the core functions of the cloud. It is particularly suitable for disaster recovery, building test and dev environment, load and pen testing, and batch processing, decoupled microservices, and internal application development and operation. The hyperscalers measure the consumption of their services is very complex. There are a number of variables that affect the price, but the alternative cloud pricing model is simple, as I told in the previous slide. It doesn't require IT managers to figure out the regions, the traffic types, in region versus out of region network traffic. We say in and out traffic of the cloud. So alternative cloud doesn't matter and doesn't care this. That makes it easier for IT managers to focus on their own application development and operation. So when it comes to building disaster recovery and testing dev environments, the IT managers don't want to waste their effort and time to calculate any cost, or they don't want to waste their effort anymore from these not core services. So alternative cloud can be good way to building this kind of service for your system. From the market shares report about alternative cloud rivals last year, when there are 5 major public cloud service providers in the market, the alternative cloud alliance ranks fourth in revenue. This means that in addition to public cloud, there are already many alternative cloud services on the market, and they are being used for their respective purpose and requirements. So not only startup SMBs, but also big enterprise companies, they started to using alternative cloud and it makes the big revenue last year. This page is an example of how to use multi-cloud. On the right section, you can see the icons of Linode Cloud, one of the most famous alternative cloud providers. Linode is the cloud hosting provider that focuses on providing Linux-powered virtual machine to support a wide range of applications. Akamai acquired Linode early this year because we believe that the Linode is very powerful and attractive cloud providers from very famous alternative cloud service providers. In this example, developers are using the Cloud A for most of their workload. There is a load balancer that distributes traffic and container-based VMs. They have storage and databases. They are running for application operation. Perhaps the Cloud A is the leading cloud service provider in computing instances. And developers are using Cloud B for artificial intelligence and machine learning. The workload consisting of application 2 will be quickly meeting their requirement using the managed AI and machine learning service powered by Cloud B. Developers are using Linode Cloud for disaster recovery, test and dev environment, and have more network bandwidth. As you know, disaster recovery and building not production environment is not core areas of your business, but they are actually essential the functions of your system as well. By using the alternative cloud like Reno to implement this part, you can build a simple and fast and economical workload. Developers can choose multiple cloud vendors to meet the needs of each workload. On this page, see how Akamai's flagship product like CDN, edge computing, and cloud security services can be combined with the public cloud. Akamai doesn't care what public cloud the application should be located in. We name it origin environment. Akamai Web API Protector is designed to protect entire Web API thread with a holistic set of the powerful protections with customer-focused automation and simplicity. Edge Workers enables developers to create and deploy microservices across more than 250,000 edge servers deployed around the world. When development teams activate the code at the edge by using Edge Workers, they can push the data, insight, and logic closer to their end users. It gives you the better performance and more insight from the end users. Edge KV is the key value database store at the edge. It enables you to build a data-driven edge worker application that requires the fast database transaction at the edge. So in this slide, we showed you how Akamai, the major services, can combine with the major and alternative cloud service providers. This slide shows you how to connect the major technologies of the DevOps and Linode Cloud. You can also create an instance in Linode Cloud through our managed console. But with Terraform, you can automate the creation of cloud instances, and you can install the workload by using configuration management tools like Ansible. So we call it orchestration tools and configuration management tools. This method can also be used for migrating your workload to an alternative cloud. After successful testing, the workload can be moved to another environment, and you can use progressive deployment approach to smooth moving your workload to another environment named alternative cloud. After all migration is completed, it's a time to think about how to modernize your application. Automation and infrastructure management is a typical tasks of modernization. When considering modernization, It is also a good idea to enhance your security through advanced cloud services like Akamai. We know that the attack patterns on the internet are different when it comes to dynamic website or APIs. And we apply depends on what kinds of attacks you have. So we have the different method for web attacks, API attacks, and both attacks. We also have advanced technologies to prevent account takeover or unauthorized copying of your contents due to attacks by bots. With the capacity to respond to more DDoS attacks, we have enough the capacity than any other security companies. Your valuable systems and workload are protected by our DDoS protection and mitigation systems. So in this scenario, after you build your cloud system, you can utilize Akamai services for security and API and for management protection. Akamai Technologies acquired Linode early this year because we believe that Linode is one of the easiest to use and most trusted alternative cloud service providers. Now, the Linode has cloud core systems in 8 countries out of the 10 regions. And Akamai edge platforms are over 135 countries, and we have more than 4,200 locations. We will combine these edge platforms and cloud core system, and we name it a distributed system, including edge platforms and CDNs, virtual machines, and containers from the Linode. Combined with Linode, which has made it simple and affordable and accessible for developers to consume cloud computing, and Akamai will become the world's most distributed computer platforms from cloud to edge computing. I hope this session has given you insight about multi-cloud strategies, Akamai and Linode. Thank you for listening, and I hope you have an absolute beautiful day. Goodbye.